Lola Daviet was born July 18, 2010 in Béthune, France, to her mother Delphine Daviet and her father Johann Daviet. The family lived together in a building located in the 19th arrondissement in Paris, France, where her father was the building's caretaker. Lola also had two older brothers named Jordan and Thibault. At the time of her death, Lola was 12 years old, and she was also a student at the Collège Georges Brassens in Paris and was champion of France in aerobics. The young girl was friendly and driven. She was also said to be a promising gymnast, who had been selected to compete in national championships. Lola's parents worked as professional caretakers for a number of buildings in northern Paris, including the one where they lived. On Friday, October 14th, 2022, Lola's father, Johann Daviet, started growing worried after his daughter hadn't arrived back home from school at her normal time. Around 4:30, he called the police and reported Lola was missing. Both Johann and Lola's mother, Delphine, were immediately worried about their daughter, as they knew that she always came straight home from school on Fridays, because her family would drive up to their house located in Béthune for the weekend. While waiting for the police to respond, Johann, who was the building's caretaker, began checking CCTV video surveillance footage, just to make sure he hadn't missed Lola entering at some point. When he looked at the footage, to his surprise, he spotted his daughter walking in the front door of the building around 3:20 that afternoon. She was talking to a woman as she entered, but the thing was, neither Johann or Delphine recognized this woman. Hoping someone might either recognize this unknown individual or had maybe seen Lola, Delphine decided to make a Facebook post. The post read, "Alert, abduction of our daughter Lola. Seen last time at 3:20 in the company of a girl we don't know in our residence. Lola has white jeans on, white sweater with a hood as well as her gray backpack. Please help us find her." When police began investigating the 12-year-old's disappearance, they found signs of a struggle in the basement of the apartment building. They also found a box cutter and duct tape. Then, 7 hours after she'd been reported as missing, at 11:30 that night, a homeless man reported that he had found a plastic trunk in the building's courtyard, and inside he had found a body. When police went to inspect the trunk, they would find Lola's body. She was stuffed inside and bound, with her face covered with tape and her throat slit. The numbers 1 and 0 were written on her feet in red ink, which looked like they could have been placed by a device, as police said. An autopsy of the little girl's body would later reveal that she was also tortured, as she had multiple other wounds on her body. She had also been sexually assaulted. Her cause of death was determined to have been from asphyxiation. A couple days later, on October 17th, a 24-year-old Algerian homeless woman named Dabia Benkired was placed into custody and charged with Lola's murder. Dabia had regularly been seen hanging out in the area by the Daviets' apartment building. She would often call out to passers-by, sometimes to ask them for a cigarette, other times to scrounge a few coins. Dabia was also believed to be the mysterious woman who was seen in the apartment building's security footage. She had been arrested while she was out with her sister, who lived in the same building as Lola and her family. There were 5 other people, including Dabia's sister Friha Benkired, and a 43-year-old man who were additionally arrested in connection with Lola's death. 4 of the other suspects, including Dabia's sister, were later released, but the 43-year-old man had admitted to police that he had picked up Dabia in his car, along with the plastic suitcase, and he had then brought her to his home, where he said she stayed for 2 hours before leaving again in a chauffeur-driven car that he called for her. He claimed to have been unaware that there was anything suspicious in the suitcase. But even though this man was held by police for a time, investigators confirmed that Dabia had acted alone. Dabia was interviewed 6 times between the afternoon of October 15th and the end of the day on October 16th. While at first she claimed to know nothing, she would finally confess to Lola's murder during her 4th interview with investigators, on the morning of the 16th. However, the native of Algeria, who has no diagnosed psychological issues but was described as having extreme psychological problems, fluctuated between accepting and denying responsibility for the crime. She said that her account of committing the murder was actually a recalling of a dream. At points, she blamed her heinous acts on an armed stranger or a ghost. and when she was shown pictures of Lola's body, Dabia was completely cold and uncaring, stating, "That doesn't make me hot or cold. I was raped too, and I saw my parents die in front of me." According to Dabia's initial confession, after she had breakfast with her sister at her sister's apartment, on the morning of October 14th, she'd gone for a walk without any specific goal in mind. She ended up taking the metro to the Champs-Élysées, then returned to her sister's place. It was then that she'd lured Lola into her sister's apartment and ordered the girl to shower. From there, Dabia forced Lola to perform cunnilingus on her before she put adhesive tape on Lola's face, which caused her to be unable to breathe and was ultimately how she died. Dabia said that after she killed the 12-year-old, she proceeded to have a cup of coffee and listen to some music. Then she decided to stab Lola's dead body. Soon after, Dabia hid the girl in the plastic trunk. Dabia also told investigators that she drank some of Lola's blood and stored some in a vial, though this vial was never actually recovered. It is still unclear how Dabia convinced Lola into following her into the basement. Recently found evidence confirmed that the suspect had also talked about selling body parts. An eyewitness saw Dabia entering the building alone about 2 hours after the surveillance cameras had caught her and Lola entering the building. The witness said that they had then seen Dabia about a half an hour later. She was carrying a heavy suitcase and she was looking crazy. Dabia was seen struggling to carry the suitcase, but the witness thought that it was due to it being full of heavy items and her being quite slim. They had never thought that there was a body inside. Other witnesses said they saw Dabia dragging the suitcase out of the apartment complex, which was stained with blood and smelt strongly of bleach. Before she'd left Lola's body in the courtyard, Dabia was seen walking around with the suitcase. She even left it outside a cafe and went to the bakery opposite to buy a croissant, as if nothing had happened. Dabia also allegedly asked another witness for help loading the suitcase into a nearby car as she struggled with it. She told the person that she would pay them with money from an organ trafficking affair. However, in her police interview, Dabia did not make mention of any organ trafficking, and despite the witness's alleged account, police are reportedly not considering organ trafficking as a motive in this case. They just think that Dabia is mentally unstable. Dabia would also tell investigators why she had killed the little girl. She said that her motive was a dispute she had with Lola's mother days prior. Apparently, Dabia had been hoping to move in with her sister Friha, who lived in the same building as the Daviet family. However, Lola's mother Delphine refused to give the homeless woman an access pass for the building. According to Dabia, Delphine had closed the door in her face, and from that moment on she had nothing but hatred for Delphine. When Dabia saw Lola arrive home on October 14th with her access pass, Dabia asked her to let her borrow it. But Lola refused, saying that her parents didn't want her to lend out her keys. Dabia didn't accept this answer, and she told Lola that she had to let her in so she could get on the elevator. She said she then somehow forced the 12-year-old to go up with her in the elevator, with her to her sister's apartment. Dabia never specified what the two numbers found on Lola's body meant. Born in Algiers, Dabia was a devout evangelical Christian who had arrived in France in May of 2016 on a student resident permit, but she was obligated to leave French territory in August of 2022 since she had not been able to provide them with a valid residence permit. But apparently, she had fallen between the cracks. Dabia had had no prior criminal record herself, and was instead known to police as being a victim of domestic violence back in 2018. But back on August 21st, 2022, Dabia had been detained at Orly Airport for having neither a plane ticket nor any valid identity papers, and she was then issued an obligation to leave France within 30 days. This didn't end up happening, though, and she'd been allowed to remain in France due to the country's controversial self-deportation policy, where the state turns a blind eye to the individual remaining in the country illegally while counting them as part of deportation statistics. Dabia's older sister, Friha, explained to investigators that her sister was the bad seed of the family, and she was always causing problems. Friha believes that Dabia may have been bipolar as she was constantly up and down with her mood. Friha was quoted as saying, "She goes out. She returns. It's useless, my sister. She shames me when I made her go out with me. She also said that she was annoyed that Dabia was not looking for work and that she never did any housework. Friha would tell the investigators that recently, Dabia had also been making incoherent statements at night. One time, Dabia had awoken her sister at 3 in the morning and told her, "I have received a message. They are going to kill me. They will kill me on the 16th. Medics recalled that they had treated Dabia back in July of 2019, but she ended up assaulting them. She'd refused to pay for her treatment and became extremely violent, lashing out at the medical secretaries. When she was finally forced out of the medical practice, she ominously shouted at them, "I'll be back, you don't know what I'm capable of." On October 19, 2022, the prosecutor's office indicted Dabia for murder and rape of a minor under 15 years of age, involving acts of torture and extreme violence. On the same day that Dabia was indicted on her charges, the police also took her sister, Friha, into administrative custody on charges of staying in France illegally. She was deported back to Algeria on December 16, 2023. Following the murder, conservative and far-right critics alleged that the government was not doing enough to stop illegal immigration, but ministers hit back that such criticism was improper. And Lola's family has demanded that politicians stop using their daughter's murder to peddle slogans. Dabia Benkarid's trial wouldn't start until October of 2025. Psychiatric evidence introduced at her trial stated that she was of normal intelligence and was not suffering from any psychological trouble, displaying no psychiatric pathology. In the end, Dabia was found guilty, and she was sentenced to life in prison without parole. She is the first woman in France to receive this sentence since it was introduced into French law in 1994. Only 4 other criminals have been sentenced, all of them men. When handing down her sentence, the judge stressed the extreme cruelty of her deeds and the real torture that Lola had gone through. He also took into account the indescribable psychological harm that had been done to both Lola and her family. This included the fact that her father, who fell into alcoholism after her death and had separated from his wife, died of health complications on February 23, 2024, at the age of only 49. Following her death, Lola's friends and family mourned the loss of the happy girl who loved gymnastics. Students at her school were very shaken by the shocking murder, and many of her classmates gathered at the Georges Brassens School shortly after her death to place flowers in Lola's memory. Lola Daviet was laid to rest on Monday, October 24th. Her services were held at the Saint-Omer Collegiate Church in Lillers, Lola's native region in northern France. The church only had room for 500 people, but so many had turned out that loudspeakers were set up outside so that the service could be heard by everyone. During Lola's funeral, one of her brothers spoke, saying, "I hope I was there enough for you, even if it passed by too quickly. My beloved little sister, unfortunately, you left too soon. When you came back with a French gymnastics champion medal, I was so proud of you, and I still am. We will miss you and know that you, my little sister, will always be in our hearts." Lola's burial, in her white coffin adorned with flowers, took place privately after the service,